At the end of the last video, our work was here, and so now I've completed the single corner, which hopefully you'll be able to do. And the next point we have to do is to complete this oblong, is to pick up the stitches that we originally cast on when we were starting the blanket, and when we cast on 10 stitches and did 18 rows or 9 ridges. So the progress here now is the row is more or less the same. You slip the first stitch with the yarn at the back, knit 8 stitches. Got my yarn in the wrong place. And that last stitch, you slip that stitch and pick up the first loop from your cast on. And as before, I prefer to pick it up with the right hand needle and pass it over to the left hand needle. Knit that stitch, pass the slip stitch over and turn the work and knit to the end. Now here we are again. If you want to continue the line, you put on the wrong side rows, put your needle underneath the yarn, slip that stitch purlwise, and then put the yarn between the two needles, and that will ensure that the the line continues. So knit to the end. And here we are again. You'll notice that my needles are wooden. They're actually bamboo. And these wooden needles are a great help if you have any arthritis in your hands. The old-fashioned steel or needles are not good for... I'm picking up the next, slipping that stitch, picking up the next loop from the cast-on edge and knitting that. If you have any problems with arthritis or any pains in your hands, you're far better off using wooden needles or bamboo or any other wood. And in fact, I don't use metal needles at all these days. And my needles are quite short as well, because when you've only got 10 stitches, you don't really need a long needle that's usually quite 10 or 12 inches long. And so we keep doing, slip that stitch, knit 8, slip that stitch, pick up the next loop from your cast on edge, knit that stitch and pass the slip stitch over. I'll do one more and then hopefully you've got the idea. Pick up yarn over the top of the needle, slip that stitch, put the yarn back and go to the end, knit to the end of the row. One more row and then I'll leave you to do the rest on your own, in your own time. And all these videos are available on YouTube, and I'll ensure that you have the link. I can let Helen have the link and she can email the link to you. Right. Now you should be able to see the line, the raised line. It's gone up here, which is where our first time of picking up loops, and then it's going along there. And we're going to carry on picking up the loops from the cast on edge and you may find that you can only find 9, but the 10th one is this loop at the end, which was the first row that you did, where you slip the first stitch with the yarn at the back of the needle, and that is the first loop, and that's your 10th stitch. So I will carry on until I get to the end here, before I rejoin you to explain what happens next. I'm back again, not quite gone much farther, but my yarn is running out. So I'm going to show you how I join a new ball of yarn. Normally, you can change your colours on the 10 stitch blanket as often as you want, and that might be more often than some of you may change it more often than others. I don't normally change the yarn when I start off the blanket. I wait till the edges are a bit longer. But bear in mind, once the blanket is quite large, then the centre isn't any longer a great big feature of colour. So there are several ways of changing your yarn, and some of them you can find on YouTube. There's a Russian join, and there's also a magic knot, both of which are quite good, but also rather time consuming. And so this is the way I would do it. As we've only got 10 stitches, I don't want the ends to be on either end of the work. So I start the row and slip the first stitch, and I will knit the second stitch. And then this is my yarn that's running out, and this is the end of the new yarn. So I lay them together and then start knitting with both pieces of yarn. Let's see if I can get them to sit properly. Best laid schemes. There we go. Holding the one end in the one hand, and this end here, it does work, I can assure you, once you get. So I will knit 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I've just realised that you may be a bit confused because I've changed over hands. I actually do knit what's called continental style with the yarn in my left hand, and that's my go-to method now. And so in changing over the yarn, that's what I've ended up doing. So I'll go back to, but you can see I've knitted 5 stitches there. I'll knit 1 more with the 2 lots of yarn, and then I will drop the yarn that was running out and leave it there, and slip the next stitch, pick up the next loop from the cast on and knit that. And turn the work. So going back, yarn over the needle, slip that first stitch, put the yarn back, and as I knit these stitches where there's 2 lots of yarn, I just hold on to the end to try and keep the tension so that it doesn't go all loose. You can give it a little tug when you've gone through the first stitch, a little tug. Make sure it goes out of the way. And then knit that one. Actually, there's 1 stitch there that I missed knitting, so there we go. So you can see you can just see that where the yarn is double, but the idea is that once you finish the garment, you can either sew these ends in, but I find that once they've been knitted for so many stitches, I mean, if I was doing a sweater, I would, and I've got a lot more stitches, I would knit it double for probably 10 or 12 stitches, and then once you finished, you can cut the yarn and it won't come out. So continue now until on your own, and I will be back when I get to the corner. I've reached the final stitch of picking up, and I have noticed that I've made a mistake, and it may be that you may do this, but I can see here I didn't slip the first stitch with the yarn at the back, and so there isn't a bump there, but when I get round I can find a bump, and you won't notice that mistake, so it's not worth going back again. And remember that this is to use odds and ends, and it doesn't have to be absolutely perfect. And in fact, you can call that the Amish mistake, because the Amish people say that only God is perfect, and so there's always a mistake in an Amish quilt. So this is the last row of picking up stitches. And this is the one where we're picking up the very first loop that we made on our very first row. So that's the loop, and slip that stitch, the yarn back, knit, to the end, and hopefully at the end of that we have our first. Now you need to do another single corner, and then you pick, after that single corner you'll go along picking up each loop along each row here, and then another corner. And obviously as the blanket grows, it seems like a lot of corners at the moment, but as the blanket grows and you've got quite an area to go along, then the corners will get less and less frequent, which is the fun of it, really. And it is quite easy once you get into the rhythm of it. It is quite easy to do it when you're watching television. I hope that's been a help.